what's the difference between patriotism and nationalism? And I think this is just a very important question, because one of the things that I posted, and it was just to, you know, poke the tiger in Facebook. I said, well, you know, I didn't really know that the United States had right now a monarch. Oh my goodness. I mean, that created a huge amount of people. Oh my goodness, this is not like this. This is a republic, blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't really doing it in that specific point in trying to get people upset or do anything like that. But one of the things that I, sorry?
Yes, you were trying to get people.
No, I wasn't. I mean, it is very weird. I mean, if you actually think about it, if you think of what will happen in any country that has a monarchy, you will see the monarchs being in their palace, and of course, it would be the prince and the other prince and the princess and everybody actually just making sure that they understand. I mean, that's exactly how it felt for me as a foreigner to see what was happening on the Republican National Convention with all the flags back there and the whole thing. And this is exactly what I think is very, very interesting. What's the difference between patriotism and nationalism? That is a great question. If you know what the answer is, please make sure to let us know on the comments, because for me as a Mexican, I understand patriotism, for example, like you're seeing right now on the screen, every time that Mexico plays in the World Cup and all these crazy Mexicans celebrating like mad. Or if we think about in the Netherlands, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, that's what I think about patriotism. How about you, Dave? I mean, what do you think about patriotism?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that this is a very American conversation. This is about the elections where there's just two parties against each other, the Democrats and Republicans. In many other countries, there are several options, not every country, but there are several options, and also more support for each one. So it's very polarized in the US. I think that patriotism generally tends to be about the fact that you feel proud of your flag, you feel proud of your country, and you feel proud to be a citizen, whether you're expat like me and you're living abroad, or you're actually living in your country, and that's what you're proud of. Nationalism tends to have a different spin in it, because nationalism means generally that you like your country or love your country to the point where you hate other countries. That's the feeling I get from it. It might not be the right definition, but that's generally what it's seen like. And it's done because of the fact that so many people have made a point of saying, you're either this or you're that. Now, this is a generational thing, because when you look at the younger generation, because they're all connected to people on social media, they don't see color the same way. When you look at the fact that when it came to the Black Lives Matters marches, when you've got millennials and younger marching, you've got all rainbow colors of people all together saying, this is ridiculous. Why are we dealing with this still? So I think that it's very much an age thing at this moment in time, but it really depends on how people bring up their kids as to what they do next. You would hope that the kids are going to have their own way of doing stuff, but it really depends on how much of an establishment hangover there is with nationalism versus patriotism. I love it, as you say, when the sports are on, so you can get behind your favorite team. But at the same time, if your team gets knocked out, it's always fun to be behind another team or somebody else's team. I know lots of people who won't do that. As soon as their team's out, they have no interest in it. And football and sports tends to be like that, about polarizing people. So as for what people's definition is, I'd love to know. For me personally, I think that living abroad, you hang up your ability to just go, this is all I want. And if I was to choose a country, after 30 years of being in the United Arab Emirates, I'd probably choose that I'd probably choose to be a Brit based in the UAE. I don't think I'd get a chance to be a UAE citizen because they won't let you have that. Not yet anyway, but that's a close second because I love the country and I love the way that I've been able to have successes here. I don't know how other people feel about their own country, because does that mean that if you disagree with the way your country is run by the leaders that you elected, you're being unpatriotic?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Confused. Or it's also the same thing as if you say, I mean, after September 11th, for example, if you were not having a flag outside of your house, or if you were not showing that you had the American flag with you, you were possibly seen as the enemy. I mean, it is a very, very interesting and touchy subject. And for that, we have this short video about an American football player that actually plays in Germany. Have a look.
Today, I want to talk about patriotism and the difference between Americans and Germans when it comes to being patriotic. I think this is a really interesting subject, and I've had some conversations with some of my German friends and teammates about it. But basically, I think for the most part, everyone sees a certain level of American patriotism, you know. American flags everywhere, American flag gear everywhere, superhero characters like Captain America, bumper stickers of American flags or sayings like proud to be an American, and it's pretty normal. You know, like we have an American flag flying outside of our house. Most of our neighbors have American flags flying outside of their house. It's a pretty normal thing to see. Whereas in Germany, it doesn't feel the same way. During the European Championship soccer tournament in 2016, I remember talking to one of my coaches with the Unicorns, and he was telling me that it was really weird for him to see German flags being hung outside of people's houses because it was during the tournament. So people were hanging German flags out and showing support for the German national team. And he told me that was really, really weird and almost uncomfortable for him to see this level of patriotism. And he told me that he thinks that the history with the World Wars has something to do with him being uncomfortable seeing all of these German flags everywhere. And after I had that conversation with my coach, I started to notice, yeah, there's not many German flags flying around in Germany, or, you know, German flag printed shirts or backpacks or products or anything like that. So I thought this was really interesting to see, basically the different levels of comfort between Americans and Germans when it comes to their flags. And of course, this is not even close to the only way of expressing patriotism, but I think it's very interesting the difference in level of comfort between Americans and Germans when it comes to having their country's flags be so visible and prominent.
Yeah, great video. So the conclusion I get from that is that America has a completely different view of what nationalism and patriotism is from the rest of the world, and the way that they, not the rest of the world complete, because I can't speak for everywhere, but certainly for whether Europe sees itself. Being a Brit, we've just done the Brexit, so we've left Europe effectively, but about 50% of the people left. For many of us, we felt European anyway, and so many would choose that as their first choice rather than nationalism for their own country. But I think that the real challenges that America's facing right now are down to a couple of things. First of all, they've got such a huge landmass with so many things going on, and because they're such a successful country and have been for such a long time, they don't really need anything outside of their ecosystem from different countries. They can pretty much produce it all in America, or they could at least, certainly in terms of intellectual property, they used to have that edge. Secondly, you got that problem with the map. Years and years ago, hundreds of years ago, I think the Pope decided that he wanted to create a map that would allow people to travel around the world spreading Christianity. So he got in a guy whose expertise was to recreate a world map, but do it so it had straight lines, so shipping captains would not get lost. So he drew it all out of proportion to the actual countries as they were, so it had straight lines for people to follow. Now, the problem is that that's been adapted for generations in schools in America more than most places. I'm not seeing it outside of America, but it's got a real imbalance of what the size of the countries are. So you've got the Western countries as huge, you've got the African countries as tiny, and you've got places like Alaska and places like Greenland as being the same size as Africa, whereas the truth is they're completely the wrong size. And I think that's given a really inflated and wrong size to education about the position of America in the world. Now, I'm not saying this to say bad things about Americans at all, but I think that the idea that America is best in the world, period, has been shown to be different, especially in response to the coronavirus. And I think that a lot of that is because it must be the best because it's the biggest. Yeah. No, it's not. So I would say those two things make a big difference. And I know that saying this will upset a lot of people, but if you look it up and you check on the real sizes of the maps, not the ones that people got taught, you'll see that there is a disparity between the two different sizes, and that has a lot to do with what people consider.
Yeah, for me, I think another very important thing is that for Europeans, patriotism, it's very, very different because of also, and this is why this video was very important, Germany. I mean, the Germans went through the really terrible period from 1933 until 1945. And for them, that incredible craziness about nationalism gets them to think of the Nazi times. And that's why people are very, very careful. And I think for me, it's very important to make a difference between patriotism, because I feel very patriotic about the United States. I mean, the 4th of July, I am wearing the blue, white, and red. And I know the national anthem. I know the Pledge of Allegiance. I feel incredibly American. The same thing happens to me when I am in the Netherlands. I mean, I hear the Wilhelmus, which is the national anthem, and I feel very strong. I also lived in England, so whenever I hear the God Save the Queen, I also had this feeling of me being patriotic for England, which is a weird thing. So I think patriotic is something that has to carry, integration, assimilation, that everybody gets together behind a country. But nationalism is exactly what you were mentioning a little bit earlier. We are the best. I mean, which is in Germany was the Deutschland über alles. Germany better than everyone else. And if you're not German, then you're crap. That is the kind of thing that I think should be seen very, very carefully. Don't you think?
I agree with you. I mean, I've lived in the United Arab Emirates for 30 years, and the success of this country is down to the incredible insights of the rulers who know that they grow as a country better by inviting in immigrants and expats to help grow with their expertise, their technology, their customs, their hospitality, to make the country something really special. And they know that. That's part of the business plan. So when it comes to nationalism, I feel pride when I see the UAE sending stuff into space. I feel pride when I see that Dubai's got the tallest building in the world. It's got the best events going on, all the rest of it. Yeah. And so you do feel it as an expat that this is our contribution. Yeah. It's not them and us as much as it's ours together. And I think that they do that better than most countries. They do have a very strict way of doing it, though. If you don't like it, you can leave. But if you do like it, welcome to our country. And the stories that are urban legends, but they're true, of people who haven't been welcoming expats, who get into real trouble in this country because that's not what it's meant to be. People to this country should be welcomed by everybody. And so there's very little fighting. I've not seen a single fight. In the years I've been here, I've not seen any trouble. I've only ever seen that people just do business, and they do successful business or unsuccessful business, but you've got a level playing field with very little crime at all, and I feel safe with my family here. There's got to be something about that.
I have the same thing with the UAE, and I think it's just great. But anyway, I think it's important that you let us know what you think about patriotism and also what is nationalism.
Thanks for watching the show. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you watch all the videos over here. There's 2 choices for you. Or, of course, I'm Dave Crane coming from Dubai.
And this is Ernesto Verdugo coming from Houston.
And I think we should send a message. Hold on.
What is this?
Subscribe.